Hello, everybody. Hello to everyone who is watching live. Hello, Kostadina. Hello, Ingrid. Welcome. We're very happy to have you with us today. Hello to the people who are watching. This is the first talk of the series Radical Voices, Radical Actions of Support Workers Nexus group. We are live on Zoom with Ingrid Vranken from Brussels, and you see us live from the page of Support Workers on Facebook. Our colleagues, Gary and Bettina, are there with you. Please feel free to share your thoughts, comments, and questions as we go along, and they will make sure that they transfer them to us here. And also, if you have any questions about the event, you can also ask them and they will help you. And we go. So Ingrid, we haven't said much. First of all, thank you for accepting our invitation to join us today. We are really looking forward to all this series of exchanges and the radical voices. We thought, both Kostadina and myself, when we started thinking about with the group about this series, you were one of the first names that came to mind, because indeed you are involved in two very radical, for me at least, I think also Kostadina agrees, experiments, and we look forward to hear about them. But we haven't told you much about our initiative, so I will start with a small introduction about this and about this event, and then we will give the floor to you. So Support Workers is an initiative that emerged in Greece during the first lockdown, so in April 2020, as a reaction to the fact that art workers remained astonishingly invisible for the state, as it was announcing its support measures for the different sectors. So they started announcing a series of support measures during the lockdown, but the art workers were not even included in them, which was really surprising. And as a reaction to that, which actually brought to the surface problems of decades with the art sector in Greece, this initiative was created. And since April, it managed to bring together more than 24,000 art workers from different disciplines all over Greece, operating always on a bottom-up basis. And main aims of the initiative at the moment is, one, to give visibility on a short-term basis to the current needs of art workers in terms of the state support in the frame of the pandemic, but also in a longer term to provide a frame for the design of a serious and complete plan for cultural policy in Greece, which is at the moment, unfortunately, totally absent. And in these terms, the Assembly for Organization and Coordination of the initiative operates through different smaller subgroups, and each one has its own aims and objectives. For example, there is a group to organize the communication strategies. There is a group to organize the public actions of the initiative. There is a group that writes its texts, etc. And now this group that hosts you today, it's called Support Workers Nexus. And it's a newly formed group that we made in order to expand the connectivity of the initiative with colleagues and organizations from Greece, but also from abroad, so that we can exchange ideas and concerns. And this is the first action of Support Workers Nexus. It's a series of talks that is called Radical Voices, Radical Actions, and it will focus on the exchange with art workers from all over the world, so not from Greece. They are not Greece-based, I mean, in order to discuss concrete ideas and actions that seek to make bold shifts in cultural policies or in social organization. And we look forward to hear about your bold suggestions, and I will give the floor to Kostadina.
Hello, welcome Ingrid, also for me. We are very happy to have you, and also for me to see you in this setting. So I will try to introduce you very briefly, but through your presentations, I think people will also understand better who you are and what you're doing. So Ingrid Vranken from Brussels is an artist, curator, and member of FOAM, which is a Brussels-based group of designers, scientists, cooks, artists, engineers, and gardeners who share an interest in taking knowledge from their respective areas of expertise and applying it in new public contexts. So we have invited Ingrid because of her engagement in various projects that are akin to Support art workers' visions as well, but specifically for her involvement in two of those. Just is Just is one. This is a project for defining and implementing clear and fair principles for working and collaborating in the arts sector. And there is a website that we have already shared, and we can also put in the chat. And Ingrid, I think you had a very important role in that initiative, and you can tell us more about it. And secondly, to another project, which is called the Common Wallet. This is an initiative between quite large, I'm not sure how many people are involved now, but it's a group of people, 10, okay, that created a common financial account, so a wallet that they share, where they deposit all their money. And I'm sure that already a lot of questions arise, but I will let the suspense remain until Ingrid starts talking about this project. Before giving you the floor, Ingrid, I would also like to just inform everyone that it is also a happy coincidence that you will be physically in Athens, hopefully, before spring, in February already, because you're one of the participants in the Onassis AIR program for the School of Infinite Rehearsals. So this is maybe just the beginning with us.
I hope so.
Yes, and please, just another reminder to post your comments and your questions.
Exactly. The people watching us from the page of Supported Workers, please post your questions either in English or in Greek, and we will make sure that they are translated and addressed. And we would like to start with Justice Just, to hear maybe from you for a while what it was about, how it emerged, by whom and how it operates. And then maybe also to what concerns it wanted to address, to what situation it wanted to intervene, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Danai and Konstantina, for having me. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to being in Athens very soon. So anyone can be in touch if you want to. So yes, juist is juist means more or less justice just, or right is right, or correct is correct. It is not a very English-friendly title, but it was a hill I wouldn't die on. So I'm sorry for that. But what is it? So juist is, first of all, a website and a database full of tools. It is a sort of contract within the professional artistic sector to work on the basis of fair practice. And juist is built up out of a set of principles, 4 principles: solidarity, transparency, sustainability, and responsibility. A set of agreements. We have 12 agreements that are a bit more detailed and connected to the Belgian labor laws, and making the gray zones in there that are often used in not such a nice way towards artists, to making those gray zones less gray. And a wide area or wide variety of tools that you can download from the website. They're all translated also into English, that are really seen as tools for empowering the artists in their positions of negotiation. So this goes from calculators for calculating correct wages, to checklists and manuals for how do you negotiate a contract for a residency, for a tour, etc., etc. And yeah, it was really trying to bridge the side of the employers who try to do the right thing but might not know how all the time, or might not be aware that what they're doing is actually negatively impacting the artists, and empowering the artists in their position of negotiation. Because we observed that a lot of the unfair practices actually arise from this already self-fulfilling prophecy of putting yourself in the asking position and being put in that again and again and again. And so who is behind Juist is Juist, or how did Juist is Juist start? It emerged from a public discussion in the Flemish arts field, I think around 2014, it could have been 2013, pulled by State of the Arts, which is a platform here in Brussels, a very loose platform of artists who are trying to bring problems of artists related to their economic situation into into light. And it was then taken up by the Employers Federation called OCO, and they actually funded the process of turning those grievances of the artists into a really usable tool for the whole field, and also conducting these negotiations within the field between employers of different sizes and artists on the other hand. And I was involved in this whole process, basically, as an independent specialist, as one then becomes.
Okay, maybe in order to make it a bit more clear, this is a tool that both organizations that are collaborating with artists, and they need to pay them, they need to be in a professional exchange with them, but also artists, independent artists who are working with collaborate as a freelancers with these organizations, they can look into this tool in order to see the organization how they should pay in a fair way the artists, and the artists how they should negotiate in a fair way in relation to their practice, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And this has to and this involves different arts disciplines, right? So you work with music, and because the conditions are not exactly the same, and the way. So how did you work on that? And what disciplines this the tool involves?
Yeah, it was one of the big difficulties of the project that I maybe had underestimated when I started out, because of the specific histories of performing arts, visual arts, music within the Flemish context. The ways in which these different subsectors of the arts field were dealing with artists, with wages, with negotiating, with even recognizing that research and making an art piece is labor. So these differences we all had to start to attune, and we had to start to make these different practices throughout these different disciplines a bit more homogeneous. And it was a lot of talking and trying to make interdisciplinary work groups where the different sectors could also hear how things are happening in other subsectors. And for this, it was actually, even though there are a lot of things that we could question about this process being pooled and financed by the Employers Federation, it was so important and really vital, because at the end, they are at the source of all of the financial knowledge of all of these different parts of the arts field. Because this Employers Federation, OCO, brings together the financial directors of all the professional arts organizations, going from small music ensembles doing Baroque music to big dance companies to a pop and rock little studio, the big theaters that most of us might know. All of them are actually connected to this organization. And so it gave us really fast access to quite some people with influence in that field. And also a lot of people who are working directly with artists, and to first work on that level, get them actually understanding the position of the artist and what is going on there. And then we would do the same for artists. We would also bring them together in interdisciplinary focus groups and talk first through the issues and then through the different solutions that we were coming up with.
Can I ask you, who did you collaborate with in terms of the artists? I mean, who were the people that were invited to take part?
It was really many people, like, I don't remember how many people, I don't know, 50, 70.
But how did you choose them? Who were they?
Well, somehow many of those people chose themselves, because this actually was a reaction to a bottom-up process that I was also somehow part of and related to. I got to know many artists who are actually interested in this matter, who wanted to know the technicality of it very well, but who were also interested in this work of advocacy and of making change, who are not just allowing things to continue as usual. So this network kind of formed itself bottom up. I imagine a bit like this initiatives of yours is emerging. And so by the time that it had gotten to the level where Oko had taken it up and we could I could work on it and be paid to work on it, and we could really start implementing it, there was quite a long email list that I could refer to. And then of course it just, the average, I call up one person and they will point me to 5 more people.
So it went a bit from mouth to mouth, the things.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I was thinking a bit about the different kinds of organizations between the two countries, because in Greece, the unions are active in some cases more than others, like the actors union, the musicians union, the dance workers union, etc. And we have a thing that it's called collective contract somehow, which is the effort for a union, to make something similar that says, this should be the conditions on the different levels, of course, mainly with the state theaters, which are, let's say, the official big institutions. But then in the practice of more independent and smaller, theaters or independent theaters, etc., things are much more in the gray zone. And that's where we fight. From what I heard, because I had some days ago in another event, a talk with States of the Arts, the organization in terms of union is not so clear in Brussels. There are not unions in the same way, maybe, that there are in other countries. They said, especially in arts, that's why State of the Arts filled in a big gap. I don't know if you agree. They told us that there is the guilds, they're called, and they are working with. So maybe that's why the need for justice was. I see it as something similar with this what we call collective contract. But two things are astonishing for me. One, that you say that it was actually initiated and funded by the side of the employers, which is quite astonishing, that all the theater owners, actually, or directors or organizations came together to say, how can we look into the field and how we can pay them, work with them on a more fair basis, which is quite a thing, because usually the unions do it from the side of the employees, of the workers. That's one thing. And then the other is that it's a much more flexible tool, and every artist, independent artist, can refer to it, on all occasions, and on even smaller collaborations when it's not with the National Theatre or with a big organization, So these two aspects of the initiative for me are quite radical, to stay in the title.
About the unions, I think it's a bit different, because Belgium is very strongly unionized, and most people working in the arts are employees or have a temporary employee status and combine it with unemployment. So the social protection in Belgium is extremely high, and luckily a lot of artists can take advantage of that, and that's partly thanks to the unions. And we also have a collective labor agreement for stage arts that is also very extensive, and that fixes the minimum wages and all of that. So all of that was already in place. But what is true is that there is no unified lobbying organization for artists, there wasn't until recently. Things started moving in that direction, where Oko has been around the table in the social negotiations already for many years with government and with the unions. But they still do it for the field, but from this perspective of the employer, obviously. Yeah, I think that's super important. And I'm wanting to believe, at least within Flanders, the field is very small and it's quite tight-knit. And of course, who are the employers, right? They're not only like the big companies or the big theaters. The employers are also the little self-organized ensembles and a young theater group. And it's also the workspaces with 4 employees, but they're hosting 75 artists a year. The alternative management offices, all of them are also employers in the field. And we have the luck here that there's quite some research that gets done towards the socioeconomical position of the field, and has an effect on and affects the employers. And if they see there is an issue in the field, of course, there needs to be an action towards it. And many of those employers are also personally confronted with it or ethically confronted with it. Of course, not all of them. There are also those who don't care, who disagree. Those are definitely there. But I think the majority of people want to find solutions, like would like practices to be more fair, but they just don't know how, because they're also underfunded. They also feel responsible towards their like core employees. It's difficult to shift structures that have been in place for 20, 25, maybe 40 years. So yeah.
Okay, we have one question that asks about the website. Before that, maybe I say something else about the way this tool works now. As far as I know, but you can tell us more, there are both organizations and artists that somehow register to it, or they put the logo on their website, which means that we commit to working using this tool. We commit in this fair trade, right? So, and you can see which organizations are following this. Yeah, good. And then there is another question. How was this tool now as a technical tool, the website? If it's an open source, and maybe there are two things here. One, if somebody else could use it, somehow put it in another context or use, the source. And two, if this source can be accessed by anyone. So if it can change, who takes, who is now responsible for it? Because there are different prices, different tools, you said. So how does it work? Who operates it, let's say?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I didn't have a lot of say in that, because it's Oko who is hosting it. And I don't think the website is open source, sorry. But all the information on the website is completely accessible for free. So everything is for free. You don't have to pay to download anything. And accessible to anyone. And Oko is continuing the maintenance of it and also updating the information. There will be, different moments that we've built in this process where we also need to revisit it. Like, has this actually solved something or not? Are there new issues emerging, especially now with the whole Corona and the aftermath that will bring? There might be new tools that we need, especially for this new context. So this will be like a continuous maintenance work.
We will go shortly to Kostadina and the Common Wallet, but before that, a quick question. Would you say that until now the initiative is successful? So how many organizations, how many artists are following it?
I don't know. It's a good question. All of the members of Oko, who are, I think, about 283 organizations in the Flemish field, have subscribed to it. And then it's just accessible to anyone. But the sadness is that it was, I think, almost a 3-year process to get this up and running. And we had to launch it in the middle of the first Corona lockdown. Because we didn't want to postpone launching it anymore. And we thought, well, people might as well already be able to make use of it. But of course, a lot of the contexts that we're talking about are just not relevant at this moment. So I don't know actually how many people have used it. I've used it a lot for my teaching. I'm using it constantly. It's like my whole lesson plan is on the website. And I use it also when negotiating fees for certain things. I have it as a referral, like, this is my price. You can check it here. And I hope people are using it and start using it.
Thanks, Ingrid. We'll come back at the last part of our event. And just to remind the audience that you can share your questions on Facebook, and we go on to Kostadina.
Hi, thank you, Ingrid. So could you tell us now few things about another project that I think has started earlier even, the Common Wallet. So what is it? When did it start? How? Why? What does it intervene into?
Yeah, Common Wallet, it's funny to talk about these two, because Common Wallet is something completely different than Juist is Juist. Like, Juist is Juist was a very institutionalized process somehow, and a real challenge of diplomacy at times. And Common Wallet is almost the opposite. It's a group of 10 people. We started out together 3 years ago, almost now. And we share all of our income and all of our expenses. It's as simple as that. So everything that we earn, like the speaker fee for a panel discussion, everything, teaching, unemployment benefits, childcare money, comes onto a common bank account, and everything that we spend goes from that account. So that's mortgages for apartments or rent, clothes, food, all of it. And yeah, it was initiated by the artist Christoph Meyerhans, who was doing also research on money. And he invited basically all of us somehow. And then we said, okay, we'll do it. And we start for 3 months. And after 3 months, we said, we'll do it until the end of the year. And now we're 3 years in and not planning on stopping anytime soon. Yes, and what is it trying to tackle? It's so hard to remember what it was the desire at the start, because it has changed so much over the past 3 years, and it has changed me also so much. But in a way, it was an attempt of of reacting to this, I think also the loneliness of money, and this individualization of financial responsibility, but also this precarity and the juggling that we all do as art workers and artists, and to somehow also allow to play more with notions of value and productivity in our personal lives. And by doing that, of course, to have a larger critique on how we can share and how resources could be distributed more fairly, or at least more towards what the needs really are.
Yes, thank you. So we already have one question that is also a clarification question, but also really touching at the nerve. So are there any restrictions in this commons wallet spending?
No. So we have only one principle, and that is radical trust. So there are basically no rules around what you can spend or what you can spend on and what you cannot spend. We really trust that everyone in the common wallet has the best intentions for the whole in mind, and that all spending that will happen will be in relationship to the reality that we're in at that moment. We have some little tools for foreseeing the foreseeable future in terms of what is our income, what is our cash flow. And that helps in making decisions around spending, individually or collectively, but nothing is out of the question. And there hasn't been an issue with it, actually.
Yes. I remember also hearing you talking about this project before, and I think one of the issues that you talked about was about how this will continue, so the futurity or the future of this. And one of the ideas was to create a cooperative, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I'm wondering about whether what you're now experimenting with, which I think is a real radical action, is also done in a way that is, so this is a private account, right? So it's not a company, so it's not structural. But it does disseminate, I think, as an idea, also through the work that you're all individually and collectively doing, and how you're talking about it, and so on. So my question is perhaps twofold. So on the one hand, is there some more concrete kind of structural project that you have with this, so that it will intervene also in ways that money is floating, circulating within the art sector? Or is there another way that you hope, or you're already achieving to create some contagiousness of that?
Yeah, it's much more the second thing. So at the very beginning, there was indeed this idea of making a cooperative that could host also our individual work, and that could produce our work, because we're still working individually. We each have very different professional circumstances. And some of us were in need more also of a structure to host our work. And that was where there would be a link between Common Wallet and the cooperative. And actually, the more we practiced the Common Wallet, the less we became interested in this production structure. And I think the more we became interested in diving deeper in what are these deeper emotional implications of this kind of sharing and of cultivating this kind of trust? Because I saw in the chat this question, so you can only start if you trust each other. No, like I didn't know half the people when I came in. I knew 2 people and I kind of trusted them, but I also didn't know them that well. So it's really about engaging in the process where this cultivation of trust is a central part of the practice. And we do that through the medium of money. And I think that understanding became much, like just grew over time and became much more of our interest. And I guess what we would hope is not for the Common Wallet to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, because you really need to have this very personal connection and be able to maintain that. But for it to multiply, for different Common Wallets to start, and for them to maybe also have different ways of functioning, so we could exchange maybe practices or disagree with each other and do things differently. So that would be, I think, the most interesting outcome for us. And in ways in which the project itself can grow, there are a couple of things that we see at the horizon which have more to do with savings, because then we start to also look at not only at cash flow, but at capital, because this is where the inequality still is also between us. There are some of us who come with capital and some of us who don't. There are some voices moving towards shared living, or maybe connecting it to other shared living projects that then again involve other people.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. There is another question. I don't know how. So how can someone join, if someone can join, and do they commit as well to collective spending on a cause, on something that they buy all together?
And maybe it makes sense to combine the questions, because they also ask, there's another question that asks if there is a maximum number of participants.
Yeah.
So there is another question that asks, does it only work in small groups? Mm-hmm. So then the number, the amount.
And maybe an additional question for me would be, what is the maintenance work? So what do you have to do in order to actually maintain this trust? Or like practically, do you have to meet often, or, you know, have dinners together? How you didn't know most of the people, you said in the beginning. So how does that work to sustain itself?
Good questions. So I'll start with that one about the maintenance, and it relates a bit to, can it only work in small groups? So the way that we chose to do it, we came to the conclusion that it only works in a group that is 10 or maybe a bit bigger, but not smaller than 10, but also not much bigger than 10. Because we need to have, on the one hand, like a critical mass of income that can support fluctuations in income between us and different kind of decisions, life decisions that we might make. So you need enough capacity financially. But also it can't be that big that there is no personal relationship, because in the way that we are doing it, the personal relationship has become very important. And we do meet normally every week for breakfast. And now we meet for a walk, or we meet for online breakfast, depending a bit on the situation. Because it's so important to stay in touch with what's happening in each other's lives. If we want to be able to anticipate things, if we want to be able to support each other, we have to know what's going on. So on these weekly breakfasts, we mainly talk about what's happening in our life, and we do a little practical financial update. And this is a lot of the maintenance work, actually. The moment that things starts to become a problem, it's almost always, or it's always because we're not meeting. the summer is always difficult because people are gone. And then at the end of the summer, there's always this like little annoyance and problem because we didn't see each other. So we don't have this large enlarged empathy that you need. So yeah, I think there is a kind of a limit to the group in the way, at least, that we are organizing ourselves. And coming in and moving out, there has been someone who left, and that was very celebratory, even though it was also sad. They just found out that it wasn't an experiment for them, that they actually don't like dealing with money so much, because we are dealing with money as a project almost. So we're busy a lot with money, but just in a very different way. And they just didn't feel like that was right for them. So they left, and that was quite simple. It was also a short negotiation on the basis of their specific situation within the common wallet. And then we had a new member enter. And yeah, I cannot speak for them, obviously. But what she has told is that at the beginning, it was really difficult to let go of some, I don't know, like training wheels almost. Well, all of us were already so acquainted to no longer looking at what we're spending, no longer tallying whether what we're spending equals what we're bringing in and this kind of stuff. So that for them took a while to feel at ease in this new situation.
Can I ask you one more thing? And then there is another question which maybe draws a bit away from this project. So in order for, I imagine that you have a tax advisor or someone or a lawyer, someone who works with you in that. I was wondering if in order for a person to be involved, do they also have to be part of that sharing group, or do you have external people that work with you for the legal and procedural aspects, or does it happen from within?
There is not much to work legally, because it's basically an extra account, like you would make one between you and your housemates or between you and your partner with whom you live. It's just in this case an extra account between 10 people. But what we do with that account, it's our business. And so we still are individually employed, and we just forward the money to that account. Or myself, I'm self-employed, and I still have my business account on which I invoice and on which I do my bookkeeping, but I just forward the money that I'm gonna spend, my living money, to that account. Not the money that I'm gonna spend, but a good chunk of my income to that account next to the taxes. So yeah, there is not much work in that department. And then another small maintenance work that we have is a monthly secretary who is keeping track of the planned income and who is keeping track of our joint weekly expenses to kind of know whether or not we would run into cash flow issues. So that's the only kind of bookkeeping-like work that happens, and it's very simple. It's it's a very simple Excel file that one person a month follows up and then texts all of us saying, "Hey, we're gonna run low on money. When is your fee coming in?" And that's it.
Kostadina, before you go to the question, and maybe this is the last one, we have to finish soon.
Yeah.
Can I intervene with one question I have? For me, the radicality of the experiment lies on how many times you said, and it's so simple, and it's so simple, with something that is for someone else. What? Do you put all your salaries in one? Why? It sounds so complicated. And the fact that you keep saying it's so simple, it's as simple as that. It's so simple. And this for me brings another thing that you said at some point when you started to talk about the common wallet, that it has changed your life. And maybe this is one change, calling simple something which sounds so complex in the capitalistic project of ownership. So I wanted to ask you to tell us, what do you mean, in what sense your life changed because of the project? And then Kostadina, you can.
Yeah, it's a weird question. I can also only talk for myself. It is probably very different for each of us. But
Of course,
for me,
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I got into Common Wallet at the moment where I had just quit my full-time job and I was going abroad to study again. So that was quite some moment to enter into a collective financial project. And I think, yeah, to have been held by that project during that time, and have had that, that kind of backbone was really a huge security and really touched me a lot, and also to be able to give back to that and to offer other people that security to make some radical decisions in their life is really really cool. There is no other way to say it. And I think on a more political level, it has really made me understand how money is a hugely emotional entity. And with that, I don't want to dismiss what it means to not have money. Like it is, of course, it has a real life material effect, but our relationship to it and what it starts to mean and how it starts to influence how I judge myself, how I judge the work that I do, how I judge my self-worth, how I judge my productivity, how my productivity becomes the master of my life. Like that relationship is highly emotional and filled with all kinds of pressures that come through your family, that come through your education, that definitely come through neoliberal politics and the ways in which your organizations are structured and so on. And to start to undo that together with other people, to start and make that relationship less anxious and to make that, and to build a different relationship towards on which basis can I value myself and on which basis do I choose to value my work and my success. Because I'm understanding that this money is a tool of manipulation. That is super powerful, and I feel like we're just at the start of it somehow.
Okay, thank you so much, Ingrid. So our time is actually up, so we don't have questions, so much time for questions. So I will try to wrap it up. One of them is a big question. So it's about your opinion about whether you think that there is a chance of a pan-European movement from all organizations of art workers around Europe that will put a kind of pressure in EU to create laws to protect artists, regardless the country they work. So that is that is whether you think such a project can exist, which is, would be great. And then there is a question about the Common Wallet, two of them. So how is the audience getting involved? The audience, do non-artists have positive attitude to, about both projects. So whether non-artists have positive attitude towards these two projects. And finally, there is, I think this you have already talked about, but maybe you can clarify again. So if someone has a precarious salary for the Common Wallet and they cannot offer any salary for a period, what happens then?
Yeah, I will do the last one first because it's easiest. Yes, so some of us do have precarious salaries, most of us do. And if you cannot offer any salary for a period, you cannot. And this is why we're trying to collect an overview of what is our collective total income and what are our collective total expenses. So not what are my expenses versus my income, but the big bulk of all of our incomes together and the big bulk of what we kind of anticipate to spend. Like, are they good? And if not, how can we together figure out a way to deal with it? Sometimes someone can advance some money, sometimes someone else is working much more and there is no problem. So we try to collectively figure out how to go through more difficult periods, as we have known definitely in the past months. About the audience, so in Yes is Yes, the audience is not getting involved that much yet, but a bit through the communication campaign and also through these banners. But it's really focused on changing the practices in the field. And yeah, and in the end of the day, I don't see why the audience should be so involved in that. Like, it's good to know that your artists are paid well, but I'm not sure the audience always cares so much, to be honest. And the art workers and the institutions should really care and inform their audience why it's important. And do non-artists have positive attitudes towards these two projects? I'm not sure if you mean people who are not working in the arts at all, because Juist is Juist and in Common Wallet, it's artists and people working in institutions and involved in both of those initiatives. When it comes to really outside of the arts, it's interesting because I've done quite some, or we have done quite some press interviews around Common Wallet, and then you should definitely not read the Facebook comments. We are the communists coming to take people's salaries away. This is the worst witchcraft in Flanders, definitely. But I think for many people, like, find it inspiring or admire it or find it so stupid. I don't know. My dad kind of likes it, and he is an older Flemish guy in the countryside, so there's hope. And then this question about the pan-European movement. I don't know if I'm the right person to ask. Like, I'm also just someone trying to organize very locally, because I know here in Flanders, I know what I can do. Like, I know how things function. I know the law. I know the people I can call. I know who is difficult, and I know who has good arguments, and I know, like, who has been dealing with some stuff. So for me, that's kind of overseeable. But what I noticed, for example, in a recent European project that I was part of, which is called Reshape, and might be interesting to get in touch with them to answer this question, is that the situation in different countries are very, very different. And I think one move would already be to recognize some way, to get somehow a unified recognition of the flexible, of what flexible work is and how that should be protected within national labor legislation. If that would be a recommendation or at least a push from the EU, that would be great. But to be honest, it's really not my cup of tea. What is possible there and what is not. But I think this is the main issue that we see, like a misunderstanding of flexible work, and therefore in Flanders understanding flexible work as unemployment. And this is already where the problem begins. So if only that can be shifted, and that can become a basis on which labor legislation for artists is being organized, that I think it would make a big difference.
Thank you. Thank you. That's, I think, all questions have now been answered. Thank you so much, Ingrid, for your availability and your generosity in sharing about this project. And
thank you. I think also for me it was important to somehow end on a ground that recognizes locality. Exactly. As the new international, while staying connected. And that's exactly what we want to do with Support Art Workers Nexus, how to stay local and address the particularities of our context while staying connected, so that things will not become abstract and too general and therefore non-efficient. So it's nice to talk about the tension between the local and the international. Thank you very much, Ingrid. Thanks, everyone.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. We will be in touch in Athens. So we hope to see you in one of our actions. We will be in touch.
That'd be great.
Bye-bye.
So
Take care.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.